You're listening to the Hella Well with Danielle show, a podcast taking women of color on a journey exploring all things wellness and travel related. We're all about showing you how to put on your oxygen mask first and creating lasting self-care habits that will free you to travel the world and live the life you truly desire, and not one you have to fake loving. I'm your host, Danielle Washington. Now let's buckle up and start this journey. Hello, 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 and welcome to another episode of the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle Washington. And have you ever had one of those moments where you're like, dang, I wish I said that better, or I want to say something to someone, but I don't know how they're going to react. I don't want things to get heated, and I don't want to ruin a relationship. But yet I feel like I need to say something. Like you don't want to lose your voice. I wanted to have this conversation because my guest today, Amber Wright, who is fire, and one of my girls who I go to for communication, not I wouldn't say issues, but just how to communicate better. She talks about communication being the currency of relationships. And it's not just a relationship with others, it's a relationship with yourself. And I wanted you guys to come and hear her because she is just amazing. She's the founder of Words Well Said, where she helps organizations help their people be heard, seen, and valued. And she also inspires so many people with her TED Talk around the world, mind you. This TED Talk is fire. And it's a TED Talk called Ask Better Questions to Build Better Connections. And it's just showing up differently. Words have power, but it's learning how to use them and with intention. So that's why I wanted her to come on today. And she's a gem. She's a gem that I am so grateful for having her in my life.
Hey girl, hey Amber, how's life going with you thus far today?
Life has been amazing today.
I love it. I just want to jump right in because there's so much I want to talk to you about because you are the communicator of all communicators. And I feel like some people will get so much out of talking to you. Like one of the first things I want to start with is you talk about the quality of life being directly influenced by your ability to speak confidently and with clarity. Like, can you expand on what exactly do you mean by that?
What does that mean? I always follow that statement up by saying that when you think about all of the relationships that you've had in your life, whether they succeed or fail, it almost always comes back to communication.
Right.
Someone did something and they made you feel some kind of way and you didn't know how to tell them, or you told them and they didn't respond, or if the relationship is going great, it's because they probably do something communicatively to make you feel seen, valued, and heard. So when I think about the quality, when I say the quality of your life is directly influenced by your ability to communicate with confidence and clarity, are you able to tell people what you need, to tell them who you are, to ask the right questions? Because that's how we build relationships, and our relationships impact our quality of life.
Yeah, and I want to get on it to the point later on and talk about your TED Talk. But before we even get into that, like you talk about, being able to communicate properly, but how does one even find their voice to ask the right questions or just to be able to communicate effectively?
I think it starts with being able to identify patterns. If you are the type of person that maybe you don't know somebody like me who's a communication expert. And it's like, gosh, where do I want to go? Where do I go to get help with this? Is first acknowledging or recognizing that you need help. And most times that comes with like, man, I know I should have said something in that meeting at work, but I didn't. Or if someone hurts your feelings, you give them the silent treatment instead of saying to them, hey, it really hurt my feelings when you said this the other day, and I'd like to talk to you about that. It takes a lot of vulnerability to do that type of stuff. But if you have that awareness in your brain, though, like, I should probably say something here, but you don't, or you struggle with boundaries, like you can see some of those patterns appear in your life. That's when maybe the way that I communicate is a starting point, because communication encompasses so many things. It's not solely what we say, but it's also how we say it. It's eye contact. It's the silent treatment. It's someone sending a text message and you seeing it and you left them on read instead of just telling them, hey, I'm busy. Can I call you back? Like it's all of it is communication. There's a saying that we say in the field that you cannot not communicate. So since it permeates like every avenue of our lives, it's kind of like when I don't like feeling so frequently misunderstood. Like, why don't people ever understand me? Or why can't I ever get my point across? Or why can't I ever actually say what's on my mind? That's when you know that's a good starting point to say, okay, maybe I need to work on this.
And I feel that I'm that way. Like, I feel like people don't get me. Like, I feel like I say things. One thing that I hate is like, I'll say something and someone else will say the same thing. And I'm just like, yo, I just said the same thing. Like, oh, that's a great idea. And someone else says it. And I'm like, I just said that. And especially in a work setting. And I find that as a person of color, we often lose our voice because we're not trying to lose our job. So how do you not lose your voice without losing your job? And like, just like, how do you communicate with in a way that you could be heard without being deemed as the assertive or the, you know, angry Black woman or something, stereotypes that they give us?
That scenario is always, it's such a hard question to answer sometimes because I never want to victimize people of color, and particularly Black people, even more specifically Black women. I'm sorry, not victimize, problematize. Like, I don't want us to carry that as our issue to say, oh, there's something wrong with me, but it's a very real problem to be in the work environment and not having the space to feel like you can say how you feel and have that be validated, as opposed to, oh, again, label the angry Black woman like, oh, Danielle, she was so feisty in the meeting. Like, I don't understand. Like, why did she come at me that way? It's like, come at you how? So I can speak from, since I can't necessarily give advice because circumstances are different.
Yeah.
Speaking from my own experience working in corporate America, I just never ran away from having the difficult conversation because that's just who I am as a person. I tell this infamous story of this time where a coworker, she was a yeller. She liked to yell at people. And then one day it was my turn to get yelled at in her office. And I just politely stood there. I took a step back first off, because I was, you know, you kind of walk to the side of their desk, and I took a step back and I said to her, okay, I can see that you're upset. So there's two things that we can do here. I can leave and come back when you're not upset, or you can lower your voice and we can have the conversation now. And then I just stood there quietly and let her decide how she was going to handle that. I didn't wave my finger. I didn't cuss her out. I didn't look here, girl. I could have, but I opted not to because I know what that was going to look like. But I still also drew this very clear boundary because I don't know who she thought I was, but it wasn't the one. But you have to let people know that. And it is a delicate art that takes time, but being able to kind of, you know, put things back on them has been helpful for me.
And I applaud you because I try to be a better communicator in that sense, but I'm not going to go off on someone, but I will feel, what was it? I think I would feel like I have to be in this conversation, even though I don't want to be in the conversation. And it wouldn't even cross my mind to say, like, look, you're angry. Let me back off. I would think that I was forced to be in this conversation. So now how do I deal with it? So I love that you gave that advice. Just, you know, I feel like you are such a confident speaker and just a confident person in general, whether that's true or not. That's how I perceive you. Like, were you born this way? You know, how did you get to be such a good communicator? And what are tips that you can help us that maybe, like, I don't know if you were born that way, but if you weren't born that way, like, how do we get there? Like, how do we get to that level?
My communication skills, they have come to me in a variety of different ways. I do think I was born this way. Yes. Even from when I was little, I would complete sentences of adults. I would always say, oh, you're trying to say this. Or like I would translate and be like, oh, or again, I would say the word that they were trying to get out. Mm-hmm. I was a really nerdy and brainy kid. I read a lot of books. So, you know, I had a very large vocabulary from a young age. I used to give my Easter speech in the Black church.
Easter speech, girlfriend.
Girl. So it's been kind of cultivated in that way. I didn't know that I could make a career of doing it until college. But I've always had a way with words. Mm-hmm. And because of that, when I was in college, I took a couple of communication courses, and switching to that major, I was studying liberal studies. and I switched to communication studies. And it was just like, oh, I felt like I had found myself in learning about communication and understanding the way that it, how it's just our lifeline to know that we're alive. Mm-hmm. Do you see me? Can you hear me? Like, do you value me? And just understanding the way that it impacts our relationships has just really struck a nerve for me. So I have spent all of my adult life learning, studying, and teaching the art and the act of effective communication. Do I always get everything right every single time? No, because my husband tell you the truth. Like he'll let y'all know what it really is. But so even I'm not exempt from trying to be good at it. And then when I talk to other people about it, I always say communication is a skill, just like riding a bike. You're not going to ride a bike once and fall and be like, well, I'm an expert bike rider. Actually, no, that takes time. You're not going to practice Italian. Okay, because I know you speak Italian. You're not going to just do that once. It takes time and effort, but it also comes with a level of vulnerability that I think people are uncomfortable with. So they don't like to practice it a lot because I don't like how that makes me feel. It feels risky to tell somebody what my true feelings are. And so that's what keeps them from trying harder. But if you stick with it and you really want to, you look at it as like my life could literally be just like richer and I could have a better quality, like we were saying before, by recognizing how I engage with people and the energy that I bring to a space, it's possible.
And you brought up a good thing, a question I wanted to bring up. It's, having those hard conversations and not trying to ruin relationships. And I think we all had it, whether it's a friendship that may not be serving us any longer or shifting, or it's a relationship with our spouse or our partner or, whoever. Like, how do you have those hard conversations without ruining the relationship?
Set that as your intention. Mm-hmm. I have a 3-part formula. I call it my WSD method for effective communication. I'll say that again for anyone's listening who wants to write it down. The WSD method for effective communication. And the W is, these are 3 questions that you ask yourself before you have this conversation with the person. You start by asking, what do I really want? So that's what the W stands for. What do I really want out of this interaction? I don't think we slow down enough to ask ourselves that.
We don't.
I want to feel heard. I want to feel seen. I want to feel valued. I want to feel understood, like we were talking about a moment ago. What do I really want? Like, I want to tell this person whatever. 2, the S is, what am I trying to say? I ask myself that all the time, especially if my thoughts are all jumbled up in my brain. I'll stop in conversation and say, what am I trying to say? That's such a great filter, because then it becomes a sentence where you can say, oh, what I'm trying to say is, I really love you and I think that you're amazing. Or what I'm trying to say is, I didn't appreciate the way you spoke to me in the meeting on Tuesday. So then you're giving yourself the opportunity to kind of call it out before you say it. And that's the other thing too. A lot of people just want to fire off exactly what they're thinking, and that has consequences, some good and some bad. But, we can say things that we regret later, and once they're out, we can't take them back. So it gives you a chance to slow down enough to ask yourself, what am I really trying to say here? Mm-hmm. And then 3rd, what do I want them to do? So that gives you an opportunity to say, okay, I want this person to keep loving me the way that they do. Keep doing what you're doing because it's amazing. I just affirmed that. Or I don't want you to talk to me crazy no more. Right? Yeah. So it gives you a chance to make it about you, not so much about them, but invite them into where you are. And do so in a way. So to answer your question initially, I said to set not ruining the relationship as the intention, to say, I really love this person, or I care about them, or I got to work with them and I don't want this to be unhealthy. So let me employ this WSD method and ask myself these questions so that part can be communicated. Sometimes people won't hear your words, but they'll hear your heart.
Yeah. And that's interesting that you bring up the whole thing about setting intentions, and the importance behind it, because I don't think most of us to think about setting intention about, okay, well, what is my intention in even opening my mouth? I think we're just so used to society telling us that we just need to be heard. Or if we haven't been heard for so long, sometimes we just say whatever just to be heard. One of the things I love that you talked about is about, and this is the thing. Well, before I'm going to go there, I say and all the time. And my other favorite, which I've realized, is like, right? And I'm going to stop there. How do we stop doing these things?
The homework I want to give you is to listen to an episode, a replay of your episode, or while you're editing. And I want you to write down exactly how many times you said, so, or and meaning, and because those are all, as we're listening, those are all fillers, we call them. They are sounds and words that we use to fill the silence. It's just, it's giving like audible thinking. See, so, but we use them all. Everybody uses them. So I never tell people to try not to use them because you saw I just did it twice. It takes a lot of concerted effort to eliminate fillers from your vocabulary. A lot of effort. It's not impossible if you want that to be a goal, but it's just a natural part of conversation. If you feel like you're abusing fillers, though, then one, listen to how many, you have this medium to where you can record yourself. And I always say, whatever that number is, try to do it one less time the next time.
I love that. I love that because
you keep going. So that means you're thinking about it in the conversation. And what ends up happening is by default, you slow down and you let your words breathe a little bit as I'm trying to model right now. And you notice I haven't said so or and in the last maybe 30 seconds or so, because I'm actively trying to be aware of it, but without psyching my brain out. It's just let me slow down a little bit, settle into my words and give them space.
Ooh, giving your words space. I know that is something I don't typically do because I'm usually thinking so fast that my words aren't always catching up. With being dyslexic, I think a lot and then I'm trying to catch up and then not say things backwards. So slowing down my words and trying to be methodical with it, I will try that because my dad's like, no, I don't know. So stop saying I'm like, I hate you. I can say those words clearly as day. All right. So what I was going to talk about is you mentioned something wherever I heard it was that you were saying that being an introvert and extrovert isn't about sociability, but it's about energy. Because I talk about energy all the time. Can you expand on that one?
Sure. We tend to ascribe stereotypes of our personality types as the real thing. And I always tell people when it comes to personality typing, specifically the Myers-Briggs personality type indicator, or MBTI, which is where those letters and that verbiage comes from. Your personality is not an identity, but we blame a lot on our personality type. And so when people say, oh, I'm an introvert, I don't like people, I can't deal with people. And it's like, is that really true that you can't deal with people? Or is it that you don't like too much interaction because it drains your energy? Introversion and extroversion have to do with how we like to give and receive energy and nothing else. But the way that it plays out is through people. That's the easiest way to interpret that. So you'll see someone who prefers extroversion as being a people person and really outgoing, but that's because they're energized by the interaction. Where a person who prefers introversion doesn't enjoy that interaction as much. They are energized, literally energized by a solo trip across the world or a quiet drive for 30 minutes or reading a book at home. They get that same level of excitement from doing that as people who prefer extroversion do when they are interacting with other people. So I understand the way that it looks, but then we really attach a lot more onto that than needs to be, because another stereotype is, oh, I'm an introvert. So, or other folks might say extroverts are always good at public speaking, which is not true. Mm-hmm. Just because you prefer extroversion, that doesn't make you a good public speaker. You might talk a lot, but that doesn't make you like this amazing. They have to work at it too, just like anyone else. Mm-hmm. Same way that introversion doesn't make you a bad speaker either, or incapable of public speaking. It just drains your battery at an accelerated pace. So once we understand that that is really what's at play, it's how we give and receive energy, then it's not just about sociability and how we engage with people and whether we like them or not. It's what you're really saying is, I don't enjoy this because it depletes me.
Yeah. And what I wanted to talk about is you're talking about how you're giving energy and all these other things. And we talked about earlier about communication isn't just about your words. Your facial expression communicates often. I found that for me, I communicate way more with my face. Anything I'm ever saying, and people are like, you said this, but you basically said F you. I'm like, what, me? Do you have tips for controlling the communication of your face?
That comes with, I was going to say controlling your thoughts, but it starts with your thoughts. Sometimes our faces, they really do beat us to the punch. Sometimes we can't hide it. What I have learned to do and have encouraged people to do is name what's happening. I was in a training a few weeks back I was delivering a training, and this woman asked me the same question. And I said to her, maybe it's worth, so this happens for her at work, then obviously. I said, maybe then you say to the person, don't go by what you see happening on my face. This is me processing what you just said to me.
Ooh, that's good.
So it names what's happening and detaches the other person from interpreting what's going on in your face. I'd say that if you mean it. If you really are like, this bitch tripping, right? And your face is giving that away, then you've got to learn to train your brain a little bit better to say, okay, let me clean it up. But sometimes it's hard. I'm not gonna lie to you, girl. Sometimes it's hard. Especially being with me doing what I do. If I try my best to try and enjoy a speech, even if it's terrible, because in my brain, I'm grading them because I was a professor for so long. Like, oh, they didn't practice. They didn't prepare. And I'm trying not to judge people, but sometimes my face shows that, maybe you needed to practice a few more times. So I try not to give that away, but it's awareness. Mm-hmm. And if you know that you're like that, then you know you like that. So it's kind of like, okay, let me make sure that I'm composing myself.
And so let me keep it real. I don't like, I had Botox for migraines. And the first thing I said, like, I don't want to lose my facial expression. I was like real clear. So I do recognize, I do like my facial expressions, but there's times where I'm like, ooh, that said way more than it needed to say. But, I also like to say things. I was talking to my niece and nephew yesterday on a Zoom, and I was like, I don't even need to say something. I'm going to give you the look. You know what this means. And we're going to keep it pushing. So
because it's not, I don't want anyone to feel like they have to suppress their nonverbals because you can't. Sometimes it's just, and then that is a part of the expression of who you are as a person. And there's value in that too. It's just when you know that maybe it might get you in trouble a little bit, it's kind of like, okay, let me just be more mindful of controlling my face and or doing what I suggested and being able to name it. To say, I'm trying to get my face to catch up with my thoughts. But
I wish I could have said that as a kid. I'm like, I'm trying to get my face to catch up with my thoughts. But Mama, you tripping.
I don't like you.
I don't like what you said. I don't want to be grounded. You took my phone away. That is what I'm thinking.
But then if you got a black mama, she gonna tell that right away anyway. Right. And she gonna get a look, and the look has power.
Right. So I know when people think about communication, they're always thinking about external communication. I want to flip the script and talk about internal conversation. And this one's important to me because I know that you have this amazing, I love your TED Talk, by the way. Your TED Talk is bomb. But you talk about having better questions to build connections. How do we have better connection? How do we ask ourselves better questions to build a better connection with ourselves?
Man, well, you see, that's why I made that method, the WSD method, to be internal.
Yeah.
Because we don't have enough what we call intrapersonal communication, which is communication with the self. And I think, again, I'll speak for myself. What has helped me is not being afraid to talk to myself. Mm-hmm. We all do it. Okay. Everybody does it. We do it. And so I talk to myself. And like I said, I'll ask myself, what are you trying to say here, Amber? What do you really need in this moment? I even will say, I just had dinner recently with a new friend and we were dining and I was like, I'm so happy right now. And I just said that out loud to myself, but she was like, well, I'm glad you're so happy. I said, well, okay, let me invite you into what's happening. And I had a conversation with her about how I committed to leaning into happiness as much as I lean into sadness. And sometimes that means just calling it out to say, this is the best plated macaroni and cheese I've ever had in my life or whatever. And that it makes me feel like I'm in this ongoing conversation with myself. And journaling has helped me out tremendously in that way. I was never good at keeping a diary necessarily when I was a kid. I thought that you had to do it every day, like, dear diary. Now, once I took the pressure off of myself to have to journal daily or build a habit with it, I started to do it actually more frequently because on paper, I can say exactly what I'm thinking, how I'm thinking it. I can have tears on the page. I write prayers that I pray more now on paper than I do verbally.
Yeah.
Because it's just such a profound way for me to take an honest inventory and stock of what I'm thinking and feeling. And that's also a part of communicating with the self. So asking yourself these questions, how am I feeling today? What made me sad? Or what do I need from my job? Or why do I feel dissatisfied? Really taking the time. But I think, again, it goes back to slowing down. We don't slow down enough to actually sit with ourselves. What is my gut telling me? Why do I feel challenged by this decision? Why do I feel excited about this decision? Doing those types of things. If you're not a journaler, you can be, if you're a listener and you're like, that's not really my thing, get your phone and record a voice note and keep an audio diary. Or get on your computer, but it's just giving space again for those words to have somewhere to go. And I think that is what helps you feel like, yeah, okay, the answers are coming to me now because I sat down to actually engage with myself.
I think that's powerful. And I also love the fact that you said you're giving you're inviting in happiness.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of us think like, oh, we're just meant to be, we have to be happy. Like, you don't think about the ideal of let's invite in happiness. Let's invite in joy. Let's invite in abundance. And that's that affirmation, that talk that we have to ourselves. I think one of the things that I've noticed with my audience, and I will say with myself, is what I like to call the inner mean girl. She a real bee and and she don't play. And she loves to talk shady ass shit all the time. And what I'm talking about obviously is the negative self-talk.
Yeah.
And I have tried and I do, my whole method is when I hear myself say it, I'll stop and switch. And like, cause I used to always say, hey, I would call myself the B. I'm like, hey, B, you're doing this wrong. And I'm like, now I'm like, stop. And I'm like, no, hey, love. And that's what I've been doing. But what are ways that we can, shut down the inner mean girl and work on this negative self-talk?
Well, I think, I want to make a more contextual comment about calling forward happiness. The way that I like to describe that or discuss that is when I'm sad, I'm fully sad. I really give myself permission to be sad. I cry, I lay down, I drink my tea, and eat my ice cream. I call my friend and I'm just like, oh, friend, I'm having this time. And that's appropriate.
Yeah.
So then why not also do the same when there's joy? Just say, friend, I'm so happy right now. I feel so good, because then when those low moments come back, you remember that it's just temporary and it's cyclical. So that's what that means for me. But that self-talk is really important. I think we're all guilty of negative self-talk, or we can be in one way or another. And I think what has helped me is just remembering that I am my own best friend and the body responds to what it hears. And if we're going to talk about positive affirmations and energy and all of that, what are you telling yourself? I remember standing in the mirror one day And I promise you, this is going to sound a little crazy, but my body was like, when will I ever be good enough for you? Just as I am. That was, I don't remember. I wish I had written the date down, but I haven't been on the scale since that day. And I was like, you know what, body, you're right. Thank you for working as hard as you do to keep me alive and keep me healthy. I appreciate you. And I'm gonna give you the love that you deserve. And that's that self-talk stuff. So it's like, would you talk to a friend the way you talk to yourself? And if you wouldn't, then that's when you know you got to course correct.
Yeah, I always tell people, talk to yourself as if you were talking to your 5-year-old daughter. I have a 5-year-old daughter, but I know I wouldn't be calling my 5-year-old daughter B, and I wouldn't be scolding her for not getting the groceries at the right grocery store or something like that. And so I think it's a process. And I've noticed when I do shift, like I energetically feel different when I'm calling myself love. Hey, love, it's okay. And I always love to say giving yourself grace, because I don't think verbally we give ourselves grace enough at all.
Yeah, I agree.
And it's a problem. The other thing I want to talk to you about was, and this is an interesting one, because I feel like as women of color, we are sometimes stereotyped as having and needing to be the strong friend, or we're strong people. And we always want people to think we're good. How are you? Oh, I'm good. I'm good. I'm great. I'm blessed. I don't know. Someone said that to me and I was like, girl, I know you ain't. My face probably said that. I was like, oh, sure. Okay. I'm like, energetically, as someone who's intuitive and an empath, I was like, ooh, you're not. But that being said, how do we answer the question, how are you, without saying I'm good, being authentic to ourselves, but also without giving out all of our business?
That was something that I made comment on in my talk. And if you're listening, it's called Ask Better Questions to Build Better Connections, if you want to YouTube it.
But I'm going to put the link in the bio. So,
oh, awesome. What I used to be really good at that. Oh, girl, I'm great. And convincing too. I mean, give me my Oscar. Okay.
You're a Virgo, duh.
Exactly. But I learned that I was really cheating myself.
Yeah.
And I was cheating people around me from really being able to see me stripped down. And so the way that I answer that question now is, people ask me how I'm doing. Whoever asks me that first gets the most honest. That's my invitation to check in with myself. And I'll stop and I'll say, gosh, how am I really? And people laugh and at me as I really sit with it. And then I explain to them, if you're the first person to ask me that, that's my chance to really think about it and check in with myself. And if I'm doing great, I'll say as much. You asked me at the start of our conversation, how was my day going so far? And it's going amazing. And it is. I had a great workout. I had a good call before this one. It's a quiet morning. I feel good today. But if that weren't the case and we still had to do this and you were like, so Amber, how are you doing? I would say, Danielle, I'm not doing my best, but I'm trying my best. Thank you for asking.
Yeah.
And you just leave it at that. I don't got to tell you all my business. Girl, you know what I'm saying? My mama, she get on my nerves. We don't got to go into all of that. I mean, we could, because you're my girl, but like, yes. You know what I mean? It gives yourself permission to say when you're not doing as best as you would like to be. And it gives you an opportunity to honor that, but without necessarily going into more detail. And that thank you for asking is that punctuation, depending on who you're talking to say, we don't have to go further, but I'm trying my best and that's what you need to know.
And I love that. It's giving yourself permission to feel, say, and be who you are. And that allowing of giving yourself permission, that allowing of you to be you and how you communicate and how you show up. I think that plays into directly what you talked about in the beginning of the conversation, the quality of our life. And I love that about you.
Exactly.
So how can people reach out to you? I know that you are doing 50 million things and you're also working in school. Yes. And so I don't know if you're taking on clients, but like, how can people find you and just connect with you? Like, I know I follow you on Twitter and LinkedIn. Like, I think that's one of the things that I remember. There was a LinkedIn post you did about, was it, instead of saying when you're an email, like instead of saying, what is it?
I hope you're well.
Yes. I hope you're well. I was like, oh, girl, that was good. Because I say it all the time. So I will make sure people get that too. But how can people find you?
I'm all over the internet at Talk to Amber. That is my website name currently. The name of my company is Words Well Said, but I'm working on developing a separate website specifically for that. And so I always say I'm on the book, the bird, and the gram at Talk to Amber. I'm most active though on Instagram and Twitter. Okay, Facebook perfect. Is a ghost town, so try to Facebook. So, but yes, if you want to get a peek into who I am and how I live my life and what my daily life is like, then you definitely want to watch my stories on Instagram because we do all the things there. But that's the best way to connect with me. And through those channels, you'll find ways to engage with me if you so choose.
Love it. So at the end of every show, I like to ask people quick fire questions. Very simple, nothing crazy. I'm not asking for Social Security or anything like that, unless you want to give it to me. My sister ain't too proud to beg. So the first question I like to ask people is, what does living hella well mean to you?
Hella well means I'm hella happy. I'm more than that. I feel good. Happy, healthy, wealthy is my motto.
Love it. Aisle or window?
Window.
What is always in your travel bag?
My wallet, my cell phone, some chapstick, this little turtle pillow, a travel blanket, and a book.
That's a lot.
Well, because I have a backpack.
Okay. I was like, that's a lot, sis.
Yeah. I don't like to have to talk to the flight attendant if I don't need to. Okay. I need all of my things, especially now in the pandemic.
Yes, definitely. When did you first know that you were Black?
No. I have no idea. That's such a good question. I can't recall. You know, some people say, oh, someone was like, look at that nigger girl. Mm-hmm. I can't recall.
Okay.
I know I've always loved it though.
I know that's right. I never wanted to be anything else. Like even with any trials that come with it, I don't want to be no one else. I love being a Black woman. I want to be a Black man. I want to continue in another life. If it occurs, if I'm blessed to be a Black woman.
Yes, girl. Yes.
And in that, part of this whole podcast is creating a wellness revolution to get women of color to get out of survival mode. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm just trying to get by and start thriving and healing. What advice would you give to your younger self?
Honestly, if I could, I would flip that. I was going to say I would actually focus on my future self and tell her that, girl, you deserve it.
I love that.
And why not you? But thinking about my younger self, I would tell her she's enough just as she is, and she's stronger than she thinks she is, and that everything that she is working toward is available to her.
And that's why you're like the communication queen. You are, words have so much power. But we forget that they have so much power, and we're not intentional about how we use them. We're not intentional about how we speak. And when we are, dang, that's the difference. Thank you, Amber, so much for being here on the Hella Well with Danielle podcast. Thank y'all for listening to us. And I hope to see you guys next week. Ciao.
Thank you. Bye.
Thanks for joining us this week on the Hella Well with Danielle show. Make sure to visit our website, hellawellwithdanielle.com, where you can subscribe to our show on iTunes, Spotify, and Amazon Music and never miss an episode. Also, you can follow us on social media at Hella Well with Danielle on Facebook and Instagram, and Hella Well Danny on Twitter. And if you like hella love the show and got some good nuggets out of it, know that I'm not too proud to ask for you to please leave a rating or review on iTunes so that we can continue to expand our reach and help other women of color. Again, thanks so much for listening, and I hope to see you next week. Ciao.